Welcome to Real Judaism with Rabbi Klapper. Unfiltered wisdom for Jewish life.
We are here on Daf Kuf Chav Zayin. We are in the middle of Perek Yud. We were talking about how Shabbos is its own world. Shabbos is its own culture. We mentioned that no matter what country Klal Yisrael found themselves in this long gullus, somehow Shabbos was always its own thing. Shabbos was special. Shabbos was unique. Klal Yisrael always had their Shabbos begodim. They had their Shabbos tefillas and drashas and zmiras, and Klal Yisrael always had this. Shabbos was special. Shabbos was different. Shabbos is its own culture. So this is what our topic is about, and this is what's going to be leading into the next number of Prok, in this idea that Shabbos is kind of like its own country. Shabbos is its own world on its own. So we're here on the bottom paragraph. Kvar amdu al haposuk l'cha Hashem hagdula agvura. We discussed this pasuk way back in the middle. L'cha Hashem hamamlacha. Hashem, you have the malchus. Lama choizer hakosov al l'cha Hashem. Why at this point in the pasuk does, after listing a number of the midos of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, does the pasuk repeat again the word L'cha Hashem? Nidbar ata oid panim bazeh. We're going to explain an idea about this. Shebetchila moine v'hoilech et sheish hayesoides b'darchi shamayim sheim chubakim olam umalo. We first discussed the six aspects: Gedula, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hoid, right? The six Yusoides, the six foundations of the derech of Shamayim, what encompasses the whole world. Shikachu binyan ha'olam b'sheish ruchos, that the whole world was created the six directions: north, east, south, west, up and down. Va'achar kach hamamlecha nifredet la'atzma. And then after we have those six aspects of the makeup of the world, Melucha is now on its own. Melucha eno mida achas greda, because as we discussed before, malchus is not its own mida. It doesn't discuss one specific thing. Rather, through malchus, all six things come together. Shal malchus hi kololus hakom. The malchus is what brings everything together. We discussed this at length in the Chelek Aleph of the Sefer. Me'ata ha'olam hanizkar im sheish ketzavoisav hu olam acher u malchus acheres letakin olam malchus shadai. Now that the malchus, the middle point that connects everything, is there, it's a different world. We discussed way back, if you recall, back in Chelek Aleph, we discussed how there are a lot of different aspects. They gave a mashal to a wedding. A lot of different parts of the wedding. There's the music, there's the flowers, there's the tablecloth, there's the waiters, there's the food, and then there's the chassan. And the chassan brings everything together. You can have all these beautiful things, but if you don't have a chassan, then you don't have a wedding. You don't have anything. And not only that, all those other things are depressing. You have all these things prepared, but if there's no chassan, there's no wedding, there's nothing. But the chassan is there. He brings everything together and he picks it up. That's how we describe malchus way back in Chelek Aleph. V'oid kinui malchus hu Beis HaMikdash. Another name for malchus we discussed then also is the Beis HaMikdash. Lachein Beis HaMikdash lo haya rak mokom avoida v'akravos karbonos ela haya be'emes oilam shelo shalem hamnibdal atzmo. We've discussed also in the past how the Beis HaMikdash is connected to Shabbos, which we'll discuss again in a second. But the idea over here is that the Beis HaMikdash wasn't just a place that you bring karbonos. The Beis HaMikdash was a whole different world. It was a whole completely world on its own. You know, some people say that about certain yeshivas, right? The Mir Yeshiva in Yerushalayim is like its own world. You go there, you're in the world called the Mir Yeshiva. The Mir Yeshiva has everything that you could, right? It's mamish like its whole world. They have special sales for Avrechim in the Mir where they buy, I don't know how many hundreds, if not thousands, of chickens or or other things that the Avrechim need, as if like they had their own supermarket, right? When you're have such a large student body, 10,000 something like that students, so it's like you have your own world. You have your own world, and things happen in the world called the Yeshivas Mir. So that's what the Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash was a whole world, a different world where there were different rules. Shekeben shesham haya gilui malchus shamayim. Since there was gilui malchus shamayim, you could feel the presence of a Kodesh Baruch Hu in the Beis HaMikdash. Ha'oivdin shebo hisnu bekol muhusam b'tzurasam chayim. The people who work there had to look different. They were different than everywhere else in the world. They were different. Their lives were different. B'macholim, the food was different. B'mishtam, their drinks were different. B'levushim, their clothing was different. Hayimitsuyonim b'tara tamidis, they were excellent when it came to tara. They were the purest of the pure, tamidis, all the time. Shechayev b'toich oilam acher legamrei. They were not. It was like they weren't in this world. The Beis HaMikdash was a completely different world. A regular Jew, Jewish man, has a chiyuv 3 times a year to go up to the Beis HaMikdash. So you have to elevate yourself at those times. You got to pick yourself up. You're going to be better. I'm going to be ready to go. Aliyah l'rego. I'm going to be a different person. But what about the Kohanim who were there all the time? Now, granted, except for very few Kohanim, most of the Kohanim also were not there all the time. Yeah. Because there were different mishmaros, and each mishmar only got 1 week, twice a year. But there were certainly Kohanim that were there all the time, certain Gaboyim, and obviously the Kohen Gadol were there all the time, living on a different plane, different in a different world. And already the Kadmonim, meaning previous generations, the Gedolim of previous generations, have already called the Mishkan, or the Beis HaMikdash, Olam Katam, its own intrinsic microcosm, its own little world. Ayin b'Nefesh HaChaim she'erech b'zeh, the Nefesh HaChaim talks about this. Beis HaMikdash hits partu advarim keneged olam umlo. All the ideas in the universe, the same ideas were in the Mishkan. And it's very interesting, like we discussed many times before, the Lamatet malchus, which are usher on Shabbos because they are a form of creation, are the same ways that they created the Mishkan. So now let's bring it together. Malchus Shabbos Kodesh Malchus Beis HaMikdash Hema be'emes Hainuach. When it comes to the malchus, the different world of the Beis HaMikdash and the different world of Shabbos, really we're talking about the same idea. Like we mentioned in the past, Shabbos and the Beis HaMikdash have very, very strong connection between them. Very strong. And we said we're missing the Shechina. We're missing the Shechina of the Beis HaMikdash, but we have it on Shabbos. The ideas are very, very much connected. Sheshneim heim mitzius oilam shebo Hashem yizbarach moilech bagoli. Because in both of them, the existence of the world, shebo Hashem yizbarach moilech bagoli. Hashem rules in a revealed way. In the Beis HaMikdash, you could see Hashem everywhere. You could see Hashem every time a korban was brought. You could feel the Shechina. It's really the same idea on Shabbos. Kol Mahusan hi malchus shamayim. The whole essence of the Beis HaMikdash and Shabbos is malchus shamayim. Like we discussed again back in Chelek Aleph, HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes into the world in a real way, in a way that changes everything, changes the whole world on Shabbos. V'lachein kol tzuras ha'olam shel Beis HaMikdash v'Shabbos doim zel lezeh. That's why the form of Shabbos and the form of the Beis HaMikdash are very similar. Like we discussed in previous prakim. Actually, I believe it was the parak right before this, where we discussed. Oh, not right before this, but previous prakim that we discussed the connection to the Beis HaMikdash. V'nei am Yisrael gam b'yemei hachol hema tachas malchus shamayim k'mo shenemar sheklolos Yisrael hayakinui lemidas hamalchus. Okay, ma be'emes mitzchadesh kasher nichnasim leBeis HaMikdash o kasher bar Shabbos. The question, let's figure out the question first, but the answer to this question is going to be an essential question to be able to appreciating Shabbos a lot more. and to be able to live Shabbos in a different way. The question is isn't Hashem here with us all the time? Isn't Hashem always, we learned already from when we're little, Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly right? He's right, left, and all around, here, there, and everywhere. That's where he can be found. Hashem's everywhere. So what's the difference? What's the difference between the Beis HaMikdash and Shabbos and the rest of the week? And the fact that we don't have a Beis HaMikdash. What's the difference? The answer to this question, which we're about to see, is going to give us the lead into the next number of prakim, and it will also give us a mahalach, a way in order to look at Shabbos and try to act toward Shabbos in a different way, so that we can really elevate ourselves and really take it in a much more real way. Ha'inyan. The kamod malchus da'ara yesh hevdel ben klal hamedina shema hamelech shoylet aleh lebein beis hamelech. When you look at a kingdom, so the kingdom, you have the country, and you have the palace of the king himself. Shebeis hamelech din acher lo. The palace of the king is different than the rest of the Medina, than the rest of the government and the rest of the country. Ve'ela nimtzoyim bo hem tomi b'matzav shel oimid lifnei hamelech mamish klape shar anshe hamedina she'eno oimdim b'poil lifnei hamelech. When you're standing in front of the king all the time, you need to be acting differently all the time, right? In I think Buckingham Palace, they have these guards that wear the funny hats, and for us Americans it looks funny, but if you think about it for a second, what are they? They can't flinch even, right? They can't even laugh. They can't make a joke. They can't. They have to It seems almost silly, but what's the idea? The idea is when you're standing in front of the king or the queen, you act with such respect and with such fear and with such awe. You can't move. You can't move. Every button needs to be perfect, shined, and if it's not, it can be Chai Misa for that. Every little thing has to be perfect, perfect, perfect. Why? Because when you're standing in front of the king, that shows respect for the king. It's different. It's a different world. We see that, there's a, unfortunately, in certain Western countries, there's a downgrade of respect for leaders. Maybe because of democracy itself, where it's so easy, or at least in a democracy that they actually respect votes, right? It's so easy just to get rid of the leader and get somebody else without killing them, right? That was so people feel I'm better than the king. I'm better than the president. I'm better than them. Yeah, throughout history, we've seen that the approach of the Torah is not that way. The approach of the Torah is that we respect leaders, even the leaders we don't like, even the leaders who Hashem is going to punish. But the Jewish leaders respect those leaders, and it started already with Moshe Rabbeinu. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu to treat Paro with respect. You have to treat Paro with respect. You can't talk to him in a degrading way, even though we're going to treat him like he's a rag doll. Even though we're going to smack him up here and there, and he's not going to know what hit him. But when you talk to him with respect. And that's the way it was with all the kings. Even the most evil kings, you speak to them with respect. Eliyahu Hanavi only spoke to, and Elisha, they spoke to the kings with respect because they're the kings. That's the way we treat you. You're in front of a king, it's something completely different. Something completely different. That's been the mahalach of Klal Yisrael through the Torah for generations. The way things go in the house of the king is different than the rest of the country. There are places that either we speak a different language, even in the castle. Could go in Anglia. It says here in England, I didn't know this. The rest of the country speaks English. They would speak Latin. It's a different language. You have to act differently. It's a different world. You're dressed differently as well. You can't just get in. You can't just walk in. It's not just an issue of security. It's an issue of respect. You can't walk in here just like that. It's like passing through into a different country in order to get in. V'asiba lekach pshuta. The idea behind this, and the reason behind this is simple. Sharei otsemes hamalchus nimdenet kvi koyach ashlita lemaisa haba mehamalchus. Because the essence of the malchus, of the kingship, is measured based on the power of shlita, the power of control that the king has. We are going to respect a king or a leader dependent on how much control he has over his people, over his country. V'im kein bebeis hamelech. How much control does he have over his own house? Shesham shlita hamelech shlita berura mifureshes v'gluya. That has to be much clearer. Out there in the countryside, do everybody keep the laws of the king? Oh, maybe not. We fudge it a little bit. Maybe this, maybe that. Inside my own home, inside the home of the king, that's where you do this. We see this in the Megillah, that Achashverosh said to Haman when he walked in and he sees Haman on top of Esther. He says, "In my house, you're trying to do this? In my house, with me standing here in my own house, you're doing this?" There has to be immediate punishment for such a thing, and that's what he got. Within a few moments, he was up on the gallows that he put up for Mordechai, because it's one thing if the people around the country they break my laws, but in my own home, you're doing this. The whole malchus, this whole idea, bringing things together, of having complete control over all aspects, of all 6 directions, of everything around us, that is felt much more clearly where the king is actually there. Umitparetet, the pratim rabim b'chol hashטachim. There you have even every little detail. So yeah, it's true Hashem is everywhere. Hashem is truly everywhere. It's true Hashem's laws, Hashem's rules apply throughout the universe. But there's still a difference where the Shechina is. Where the Shechina is where the place that Kodesh Baruch Hu wants to show himself that I am here. And that's like the king is mamish here. Beis HaMikdash, Beis HaMelech. That is what the Beis HaMikdash was, the house of the king. Therefore, anybody who was there, you're standing in front of the king. That's what you're doing. That's why it was like its own shlita. It was its own Medina. It was like the house of the king. And that's the same thing is true by Shabbos. Shabbos kodesh hi beis hamelech. Shabbos is the house of the king. malchus shamayim amizgala al yidei Yisrael v'yemos hachol malchus shamayim shel Shabbos kodesh. There's no comparison. Yes, every day of our lives, we need to be working to make a Kiddush Hashem. Every day. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us mitzvahs to do. He gave us Torah to learn. And a lot of times, we can't learn Torah because I have to go to work. So that means you're patur for mitzvahs and going to work? Absolutely not. You have the biggest mitzvah of all now that you're going to work. What's that mitzvah? Mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. Yeah. There's a malchus out there also, even during the week. Even during the work, every single day. Our job is to bring more kavod shamayim in whatever way we can. In being a hard worker, being a role model to others, having good midos, being mavater, building our midos, building our yir shamayim. Person has a tremendous amount of work. Just because a person's not in the base measures doesn't mean that he's patur from avodas Hashem. Chas v'chalila. In a lot of ways, they are the shagririm. They are the ambassadors. The ones that go out into work, they're the ambassadors of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in that outside world. And they're showing the rest of the world how this is how a Jew acts. Obviously, they get that from the base medrash. They get that from the Torah itself. This is why every Jew has to be kovei itim the Torah and as much as they can learn. And like we said many times in the past, Torah is the national pastime of Klal Yisrael. Which means we have a free moment, we learn Torah. But when we don't, so we have to make a Kiddush Hashem, whatever we're doing. But that's all during the week. What about Shabbos? Shabbos is a different world. Shabbos is completely different. The malchus Shamayim Shabbos is different. The king is here. And that brings us to the end of this parak and going to lead into the next number of prakim. But this is the yisoid. The yisoid is that we have to look at Shabbos and we have to treat Shabbos as if we are in the house of the king. And on a very practical level, once a person can visualize such a thing, it's much easier to actually do it. I need to act differently. The king is here. I need to behave myself differently. Maybe sometimes during the week I'm not as careful about getting angry. I have to be much more careful about getting angry on Shabbos. Like we've discussed in the past, from the Zohar, that's based on the pasuk, Lo tivaru eish b'chomosh v'oseichem miyom haShabbos. You shouldn't light a fire anywhere in the places where you live on Shabbos. And the Zohar says that's talking about getting angry. We can't get angry on Shabbos. I have to behave differently on Shabbos. I have to behave with more respect. I'm a king. And like we've discussed in the past, even the people during the week who do jobs which we would consider to be not the most respectful jobs per se. The guys who have to jump into the sewer in order to clean it out. We need people like that. It's very important because if we didn't have them, then we would have massive health problems. But it's not exactly the nicest smelling job in the world. It's not exactly the funnest job in the world. Like Chazal tell us, we need tanners and we need perfumers, and better to be a perfumer, even though we need both. But you know what? That same guy, when it comes to Shabbos, he could put on his shtreimel. It's like a crown. He puts on his suit. He puts on his nice tie. He's a king. He's acting differently. He's dressed differently. It's so sad when people treat Shabbos like a regular day. They wear the same clothing on Shabbos as the rest of the week. They don't do those outward movements with intent. What's the intent? The intent is Shabbos is different. Shabbos is the house of the king. And I need to be a proper servant when I'm standing in front of the king. Very, very practical. How do we change our attitude towards Shabbos? Do something different. I remember when I was in a certain learning program with Rav Goldvicht. And Rav Goldvicht was very, very makpid. When it comes to Shabbos, you must wear a white shirt. You must wear a white shirt. It's Shabbos. How could you not wear a white shirt on Shabbos? How could you not wear a white shirt on Shabbos? You're different. There's a dress code. You're in the house of the king. There's a dress code. You can't just go walking around in your shorts and flip-flops. What kind of business is this? Don't you realize who you're in front of? Even if we don't realize who we're in front of, but we know that I have what to grow and I have what to change and I have what to build on myself. So the outward movements, Ramchal says in Mesil Yesharim, the outward movements, the things we do on the outside will affect us on the inside. It'll change the way that we actually feel on the inside. So even if we don't feel this necessarily on the outside, it is very, very kedai to do it anyway. Do it anyway. Because if we do it, we will come to change and feel it differently on the inside. And Shabbos will feel more special. It's so sad when Shabbos is just a day where a person could just go to the beach. Or Shabbos is just a day that I can just do nothing. We're missing out on the whole point if that's the attitude. But I don't feel Shabbos, Rabbi. But I don't feel Shabbos. You don't feel Shabbos because you don't want to feel Shabbos. A person would put more effort and really think about what he's doing. He would. It might not be the first week, and it might not be the second week, but he will. You hear these stories about Balei Tshuva. The first time they experience an authentic Shabbos is like mind-blowing. Wow! I didn't even know such a thing could exist. They come to a Shabbos Seudah. They never saw Shabbos before in their lives. They don't know. Come to a Shabbos Seudah, and the food is so tasty, and there's so much singing, and people are saying nice ideas. They don't know even to call it a vart. They don't know to call it a dvar Torah. They're just saying something, and it sounds really, really interesting, and it piques my curiosity, and it's like, wow, I never experienced something like this before. That's amazing. It's amazing. You think in the world they have something like that? You think Thanksgiving is like that? in between the when they have the commercials during the football game, right? That's when. What are we thankful for? I don't remember that. We had that. That everyone went around the table saying, "What are we thankful for on Thanksgiving?" They say, that turkey has 6 legs. I want a big bite of that turkey, right? Shabbos is about understanding Hashem is mamish here with us, and we have to act that way. And the more we actually act that way, we'll actually feel it a lot more. Okay, we'll start the next parak next week. Go ahead.
Thank you for joining Real Judaism, where we explore Torah's wisdom for real life. Created by J Foundations and produced by Eli Podcast Productions. Find more episodes at realjudaism.org and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.